Hello, everyone, and welcome. Excited to see you all here. I see a lot of names of people that I know and love. You are 100% welcome to stay with just a name in a box, but you could also put your screen on and whatever. Ah, there you go. Whatever suits you is totally fine. But I'm so happy to see my top row is like everyone that I know. Hello, hello, and welcome. This is a big topic. When Nika and I put these things together, they really come out of our own lives, things that we're working on. It's very real, and we never know what's going to be most attended. But it seems that money is a thing, and I get it because it's such a complicated topic, and and we're going to find out that it has nothing to do with numbers. And it has very little to do with money at all. It has everything to do with self-worth and how you grew up around money. Just about everything we do in our adult life has to do with how we were brought up. And either it's a reaction to that or you're following suit. And so in my own life, my mom grew up in the Depression. And so she had nothing. I mean, she had no shoes. She lived in a, I'm, I'm very old and my mother much older. She lived on a farm in New York City. That's how far we're going back, right? Because it was the Depression. And I remember she told me a story about how one Easter she had a pet rabbit, and for Easter the rabbit showed up on the table. It was that kind of existence. And so when her life changed a little bit, she couldn't actually change that mentality. So sometimes my mom would hoard, right? She would do all kinds of strange things. I remember her always taking the butter from the diner, and we'd have all these covered butters, because she had this mentality of like, we won't ever have enough. But also, she lived in poverty for so long that when she got a little, she spent very, very quickly. So she really believed that if she had this dress or she had this car, she had this ring, then she could get herself out of this feeling. And so, although I didn't grow up that way, I grew up, with in a place with a house, and we had shoes and clothes, and I never ate my bunny rabbit. Um, I lived with her, and I saw her habits around money, and they quickly became mine. So I was probably around 16 when I got my first credit card, and I was probably around 16 and a half before I maxed it out. And that really became my story. Like, oh yeah, if I get this, then people will think this about me. If I have that, then they'll feel this way about me. I feel sad. I owe myself this thing. And so it became my money story, and it really had nothing to do with numbers. I could I could do numbers all day. I could balance a checkbook, but that wasn't it. This was so emotionally based. And so eventually I got really tired of living like that. It didn't make sense. I was successful, and yet I was always scrambling. I was always, always, always broke. No matter how much money I had two hugely successful yoga studios in Manhattan, and I still never had any money, and it just never added up until I finally sat down with myself and said, okay, what is going on here? Like with everything else in your life, Paula, you have to take that moment of a bigger investigation. You have to understand what the shadows are for you here, what the story is for you here. And so we're going to do a little bit of that tonight. I'm going to put right now in the chat a little roadmap. Yeah, I think this is it. For where we're going to go tonight. So we're going to take this in pieces. And if you don't have one now, you should probably get a pencil and paper, because this is going to take a little writing um, to dig in. So I really want you tonight to leave with a deeper understanding of your relationship to money. And I think it was last month, or maybe it was the month before that, that we did we did emotional eating. And for me, these topics are really, really similar. Um, they come from a lot of the same history in our lives and a lot of the same feelings of worth. When we did the topic of emotional eating, we didn't talk about food. And tonight we're not going to talk about dollars because those are just kind of the symptom of it all, of what I am feeling. Then I use food, I use money, I use all kinds of things to make myself feel better instead of actually going in and figuring out what the issue is. Okay, so we're going to take a look at our immediate feeling about money. So, right now, I'd like you to write down 2 words that represent your feeling around money. And these words are not carved in stone. They're just what you're feeling now. Like I think about money and I'm this and I'm that. Okay. And so these 2 words are going to be present in your money story. And I'd like you to write, it could be a paragraph, a short, short paragraph, but I want you to take a moment now and write down your money story. It'll just start pouring out of your hand. Maybe your childhood will come up, maybe your present complaints will come up, but I want these 2 words to somehow show up in that story. Yes. Yeah. Rejection and aversion. Yes, that's how it is, right? We it is how we feel about ourselves. Money and worth go hand in hand. When I go to ask for a raise, what am I asking for? I'm not really asking for money. I'm asking if you love me. Do you like what I do? Am I good enough? Should I ask for it? I'll ask for less just in case because I don't want them to reject me. It's so often not about the number, it's business, right? Usually they have a budget and they're going to have to do something with that budget. They have enough, they don't have enough, they have their own issues. But for us, it's so incredibly people are on this call who have feelings about money the way I do. It's so deeply personal. It's it's if the world accepts me or not, then I will have money. Look at how we look at, this unfortunate moment in the LA fires when everyone is suffering. But we're looking at, well, the rich people, oh, they shouldn't be suffering because they're rich and they have everything. They shouldn't have emotions because they're rich and they got it all already. Or look, they're not covering the poor people, right? And there's this feeling of who is worthy and who isn't, depending on what's sitting in their bank account. This doesn't make any sense because we're all equal human beings. Maybe we had an inheritance and we got money. Maybe we worked really hard and we got money. Maybe we worked really hard and we didn't get money. But we decide who we are depending on how fancy our shoes are, right? What kind of cool coat we have, right? And I mean, honestly, in my own field, if you're hip looking, then you get more clients than if you're less hip looking because somehow you look more like you're more successful by your outer exterior. And that is not really always the truth, but this is how we judge people and certainly how we're judging ourselves. And so these are the myth busters we're going to take a look at tonight. So take a look at that story for a moment, right? And just see if there's any history sitting in there for you. And anything that you remember from your past or just a repetitive thing that you feel um, decides how you spend your money. Now, there's a few ways that we spend our money. We can say, okay, I never have enough, so I'm going to hoard my money. I'm not going to spend any of it, right? So this is a different thing. I don't always have to be broke to have money issues. I could have a lot of money in the bank, but feel really poor. I once had a client who literally would come to our sessions with a driver in a Bentley. And we would talk about that he was just not successful and he's never going to be successful enough. This is a true story. A driver and a Bentley, and he was never going to be successful. And I had to agree with him. I really had to agree with him because he couldn't find his heart. He didn't understand who he was as a human being. And so then, in my eyes, he wasn't ever really going to be successful because it's never going to be about a number. It's always going to be about making peace with yourself. So, when we look at our story, we have a character in that story, and it's our shadow. There is the us that can go around and take care of everything, and everything feels really, really balanced and okay. And then all of a sudden, there's a part of us that comes out, rears her incredible head or his incredible head, and blows your shit up completely. This is a reaction. So I'd like you to name that character now. That character is a reaction to a feeling inside. And if we can get there tonight, we're going to have a real important key to what's going on with ourselves and money. And we're going to do, of course, a hypno-meditation because that's what we do here to understand that deeply. But I want to see if you can wrap your head around that right now. There's some part of you. It is a part that comes out when you're feeling a certain way and wrecks your life, spends too much. It becomes really, really stingy. So it blocks you from certain relationships. There is a way that it comes out that is like a full stop in your flow, in your flow. So you're going to give that, if you can come up with that now, you're going to give that shadow a name. And even if it feels corny for you, I know some of you hate to name your shadows, but it's really important that we name it because it's a part. It's not who we are. We are much bigger than that. We're divine, right? We are love. This is just a little issue that we can resolve. And so we name it. So we're really clear that my money issue isn't me. It's just an issue. So we name it. And then when does it come up? Like, what are you feeling? Are you doing really well and then you spend way too much money? Are you feeling really broke and you're like, screw it, I'm never going to make it anyhow? So then you go to Amazon and spend too much money. Are you exhausted and you go to Amazon and you buy 5 pieces of makeup because you think that'll make you look better because you're so, I mean, these are all the little ways you figure yours out and list that. Okay. So you might have already surprised yourself with some of the things you've already listed just by taking the time to show up here to say, oh, I am not the person of my money issue. There's a part of me and I can understand that part of me. Oh, that's maybe more information than you haven't had. And that this part of me is very shadow based. It's going to come up when I'm not feeling 100%. And if you can feel that and know the trigger, right, then that's a lot of information for you right there. But we're going to take it a step deeper in our hypno meditation. So if you haven't done this before, we start with a gazing point, and that gazing point just helps us find some stillness. So we start with our eyes open. And then eventually I talk us through and we close our eyes and we just kind of go into a really nice, calm state of mind where we get to have a conversation with this part and with our past. And we allow it to come up. So it's really different from a meditation where you're trying not to think. Here, we're trying to have a loving conversation with our deep unconscious who got you here tonight and really wants you to have this conversation. If you are here, there is a part of you that really, really wants to resolve this. And so expect the answers to come up or you wouldn't be here. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin. And so our gazing point is just anything still in your room. If some of you come to our weekly meditations, and so you have your own very special gazing point. But if you don't have one, it's just something that's still, some people like to look at a plant. Reminds us of the aliveness of things. And then as we are looking at this gazing point, are you seeing it? Could be looking at it, staring at it. But in order to see it, you're going to have to sit back a little bit into a place that we like to call the seat of the Buddha, that place of unconditional everything, place where we allow everything to be exactly as it is. We take in this gazing point and its stillness. And in doing that, we find the part of us that is receptive. There's really nothing to do here tonight but listen and allow the answers, the information to come to you. Let's take in a deep breath. And as you exhale, feel the weight of your body, the muscles, the bones. Notice yourself falling still, even if the mind is still buzzing. Take another breath in, and as you exhale, notice yourself in this room, this container holding you safe, the walls beside you, in front of you, behind you, the ceiling above you, and the floor beneath you. Feel yourself in the center of all of that. Take one more breath in. And now, as you exhale, close your eyes and land in the center of your loving heart. And the love of your heart is very important now because any trauma that we have experienced, and certainly there's trauma around money, can only be resolved in love. How the system works. Never be judged, never be rejected. That only creates more of the trauma. So as you enter this deep place inside of you, can you enter with all the love in your heart? We connected just a moment ago with a part of us, a shadow part of us, part that quite readily comes around when money is feeling uncomfortable, when we are feeling uncomfortable in some way. I'd like you to invite that shadow, that part in, Just ask it to sit beside you for now. Appreciate their presence. And for so much of this work, we start by imagining, and then we sense, and then we feel. Now ask this part to take you back, far back as you need to go. To understand when this feeling of worth first began. You could go back to when you were 10, 9, 8, 7, or 6, somewhere in your past, you were made to feel a certain way, a certain value about yourself, maybe the house you lived in, the car you drove, that family car, the shoes you wore, the coat that winter, the lunch you brought to school. All these ways that you may have decided something about yourself. All these external ways that led you to a feeling about yourself. Oh, look at all that I have. But why do I still feel sad inside? Oh no, I don't have enough. They might find out. I better hide. What's your feeling? Where did it come from? I'll tell you now that when you get a hold of that feeling, there'll be a part sitting there waiting for you, a frightened part, a worried part, and it so desperately needs your help. It needs you to reach back, hold their hand, reaching from the seat of the Buddha, unconditional love, to let them know they are okay, no matter what is going on, that you've got them, and there's no need to worry, no need to be afraid, no need to feel the shame any longer. That who they are is perfect. They are divine. And all they need to do is allow themselves to be free and come with you tonight. If you can make them feel safe, can sit in your unconditional self. They don't fully come, they will certainly sit closer. They will certainly soften, breathing into all of that. And now, together, as close as you got, I want you to feel the flow. These small pieces of paper that we call money are just energy. And either that energy is blocked with fear, or it is flowing with the knowing of abundance. Like you, to feel the flow moving through you like it moves through every other thing on the planet. There is always enough, even when it seems like there's not, because this planet is based on regeneration. It is the theme of the planet. And so are you. Can you open to that? Can you imagine, sense, or feel? And when the no arises for you, know that that's fear. That's just a small knot that you can sit with, breathe into, and wait for it to flow. There is no single human being on this planet that is more than you. We are all equal. And when we understand that deep in our soul, then we recognize that whatever we want can come to us. It is meant to come to us. If we think it, it is ours to have. It is in alignment with our highest truth. It's there for us. Can you breathe into that notion with your shadow self, feeling the flow together as one? And then, when you're ready and in your own time, you can continue to tap into that flow as you open your eyes. And write down, take a moment, and write down anything that came up. Even if it seems silly to you, some of these things, the unconscious speaks to us in riddles. And so anything that kept popping up, just write it down. Or if it got really clear for you, that's wonderful too. And so maybe you were able to see that your current story of money comes from your past. Some story that you were told, right? Some way that your family lived, some way that someone responded to you, and it made you feel a certain way about yourself. And then we carry it forward to our future. But it happens to us when we're younger in a younger person's mind. So we don't actually can't really understand it. It just happens. And then we incorporate it or we splinter off around it. And that splintered self is what we call an arrested state of development. It doesn't mature with the rest of you because it's a little traumatized. It's a little pulled away from the whole. And so if you notice, some of your money stories are a little juvenile. Like they're not mature ways of handling money, right? They're like how a child might do it. And that's very normal because it is a child who's doing it. It's that splintered self that comes in and you finally have some savings in the bank and then you just blow it all on something ridiculous. That's something a child would do. And that is that shadow coming forward saying, oh, don't save it. You need this thing. That'll make you be fabulous. And then everyone will think you're fabulous or whatever. You have to plug in your story. There's a lot of people here, but how does that work out for you? You're going along your path and something derails you. This is the shadow, and it's always a childlike behavior. When we can take a moment and reach back as the adult in the room as our whole self, as our divine self, and say, I've got you, and we can do this differently. And now I see why you were so afraid. You don't need to be afraid any longer. And as a matter of fact, I am going to check on you every single day. This is homework, every single day for the next month to make sure that when you're triggered, I'm here so you don't feel afraid again. Then I promise you, you will see a massive change in your life. So, what I'd like you to do now, toward the end of that meditation, we started to understand that money is not money, money is flow. And either the flow is flowing or it's blocked. Whenever anything is blocked, it is because you have a fear around it, a contraction around it, a misunderstanding of what it is. Now, I bet we can all agree to some extent that this is a rejuvenating planet, right? Like everything continues to grow, even though we're worried about climate change and all the things. It's still finding its own way, right? We might not like what it's doing, but it's certainly rejuvenating itself. And we are part of that. We rejuvenate ourselves all the time as we procreate and have children and keep replenishing the planet. Well, this is true of everything that you can think of, including this flow of money. So, one of the key ways to be able to start to move this forward, one is understanding your fear, but then the other is in a conscious generosity. If I hoard money, or I only spend it on myself, or I have some contracted way about it, it cannot regenerate. I have to be able to offer it in a way that feels in balance. I'm not saying go put $10,000 to your neighbor right now because they might need it, but there's a way that I can feel free in my money. And I'll tell a personal story about that. So as I started to get more money, I was like, okay, this is starting to work. But I had this mindset that's certainly part of my lineage, part of my family, where I kind of had to keep it for myself, right? Everyone can mute themselves. Thank you. If I was going to spend it, I was going to spend it on myself and not on others. And then I met this friend who just had like gobs of money, right? But didn't come from there, came from like truly abject poverty. But this generous nature, it was just the happiest way that he could ever feel was when he gave his money to someone, when he helped someone. He always did it anonymously. We were friends. I knew what he did. He was completely generous with me. And I learned so much from that feeling. I could feel his joy. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want the money. I wanted to feel the joy of the generosity because that's part of this energy that I'm talking about. And I started to do it. I started to, in small ways that felt comfortable with me, that got bigger, always mindfully, right? I didn't make myself broke in my generosity, but I reached out to help others when I could. And that felt so good. And that, I swear to you, I started to feel like everything started to grow for me, including my business, including my connections, of course, including my money flow. But that was so small compared to everything that I was experiencing, that the abundance was in all ways, in love, in friendship, in all the ways that actually mattered. And whether I had $1 million in my bank account or $20 in my bank account, it stopped mattering because I was feeling so full and so rich in so many other ways. And you remember the story of the guy with the Bentley who had more money than he could spend in a lifetime, but he was completely impoverished. And so I started to see that this really wasn't about dollars and cents. It really was a feeling that I was worthy to give. And that was like big mind blown. I was worthy enough to give, not just receive, but that I could offer to someone else because I had enough reserve inside of me. And so when we're looking at money, dollars, and cents, I could give you, and I will give you a list of all the lovely books that I have read that have how to do it and how to become a millionaire and how to buy houses and how to do. I've read them all. I love them all. They're fun. They're exciting. They allow you to see money as a game. But it was this core work that I had to do in order to put any of those things into practice for them to work. I had to feel worthy myself. And so I had to reach back for the part of me that never did, as my mom never did, and bring that into the current day and say, that's not my story. That was her story. And I love her. And I don't have to live that way too. I don't have to live my life in debt and in fear all of the time. And so there's so many elements to this. And I hope that I make myself broke at the end, right? I hope that it's making sense to you. And so I want to stop jabbering and give you some time. Anybody who wants to ask a question, get a clarification, or share a story, or even talk a little bit about their shadow, this is a time to do it. Mm. So you're making yourself broke by being generous, right? So okay, so I'm going to pause there for a second. Making yourself broke by being generous doesn't mean that I feel worthy, right? It means that I'm giving so much because I don't feel so worthy, right? There's a way that we give because we don't feel worthy. This stuff can be tricky. It really comes from a quiet place. It's wanting to feel not, do you love me? But I want to see the joy in your face. And I don't even, you don't even have to know that I did it. Yeah. Anyone else? Questions, thoughts, recommendations for books? Okay, there's a very large and quiet crowd tonight. Um, I will say, no, I'm going to give you another moment. So while I'm talking, you can pop on too. Sometimes that makes people feel more comfortable. And so you will, when you start to practice this, you're going to certainly hit some bumps. And these bumps are really important, right? So Paula said this, and but I did it again. And when you do it again, this is this amazing moment where you can stop and pull it apart. Because before this call, it was who you were. This is who I am. I am a broke person. I am a person who struggles with money. I am. No, there is a part of you that creates that situation in your life, but you are not that. You can never be any of the problems in your head because you are divine. We are all divine. That is, I'm not saying this in a corny way. It just happens to be the truth. And so when we understand that we are whole, and anything that is less than whole is simply a part that is happening to me for me. When I resolved this issue, my whole energy field expanded immensely. I needed to have the problem so I could have the expansion. When I saw that, I was also one of those mind-blowing emojis happened to me a lot, right? Love that emoji, where I was like, oh my God, this thing that I thought was such a burden, if I didn't have it, I couldn't have expanded cosmically as far as I have and be able to sit here and talk to you about it. If I didn't have the struggle, why would you even listen to me? I've gone through it all. And now I feel the freedom of it. And I can speak from that place of having been there and worked through it and came out on the other side, recognizing that it was never a burden. It always was a blessing. Hang on. Okay, I spend when I have it because as a child, I felt my mom's lack of fear when we went to the store and she had to pay for something. Exactly. Right? We feel that, right? And that is a story that we take from our past into our present. Now, she had a fear, maybe she was struggling with money. That was her reality. She wasn't on one of these calls to figure it out why that she was in that situation. But you're not, right? So this is where the legacy comes forward. And if you have a child, you'll absolutely pass it on to your child if you don't resolve it, because it's all just a matter of how we behave in the world. Right. And so we want our children but it comes from ourselves to understand the flow of things. And that flow has a reciprocity to it. It's not just always flowing out, it has to flow back in. How do I get it? I do something for it, and then someone pays me for it. And when I feel very good and abundant, what I do is really good and abundant, and it draws more of this energy to it, which we call money. But you see, it's all energetic. Now, if you have a mom who's going, no, you can't have that. No, you can't have that. Or, yeah, you can have whatever you want because it has no value. How's that child going to know as a 30 or 40 or 50 or 70-year-old? Right? They're not going to know. They're just going to know their experience until they start to look inward, right? And so we bless our parents for whatever has happened to them, but we have to start to take responsibility for who we are and our life story. And so honestly, this is another really big truth. So both of my parents are passed, but when I healed it for myself, I know I healed it for them. I could feel the shift for them as well. And both of my parents suffered with money issues. I love having a name for my shadow aspect of myself relating to it for money. Also felt some uh, Dispenza. Yes, yeah, I love him and he is pretty amazing. Um, yes, so that naming um, your shadow makes it really clear that it's not you. If you don't name it, you can't let go of it because it's just stuck on you, right? You don't have that when you're sitting in the seat of the Buddha, you start to give yourself the higher perspective of things, right? When we are struggling with money, we are in low chakra stuff, we are so afraid that it's really hard to have any perspective, that this is not a tragedy. This is just something you're moving through. And so when you start to name it, it lets you kind of elevate a little bit so you can start to deal with it. Creating separation. Yeah, good separation. Would love to get used to the feeling of treating myself, but it is foreign. But I also love helping others. Is that a block? Um, Yes. The part where you're certainly not treating yourself, because when I don't treat myself, it's because I don't think I'm worth it, right? I don't deserve that. Oh, I don't deserve that, right? I'll only have half. Like if you're that person who refuses to take the last French fry from the plate, why? Should it go in the garbage? Take that last French fry. Right? Like there are all these little ways that we deprive ourselves that don't make any sense, but it certainly speaks to our self-worth. And yes, if you're not treating yourself well, who's going to treat you well? Right? If you can't take care of yourself, how can anyone else do that for you? Right? And then you're dependent on other people to do it for you. And that never really works out so well. So yes, and then you give to others probably because you want to feel it, right? So I'll just give it there, and I'll get to feel it in some way, but it's disconnected. So even that person that you're giving to can't really receive it the way that you want them to receive it. You have to be full in order to give. Um, and okay, any last questions? Okay. I hope that was helpful. This is a sparkling topic for me because it was one of my biggest blocks. And I feel really good and proud that I'm on the other side of it and I can see it for what it is. And their fear is gone. When that fear of some of those primal things are gone, really you get like a hot air balloon. Your energy field really does expand. And so anything that I feel like I've figured out, my entire calling is to share it, right? I feel like I get blocked so I can figure it out and then I get to share it. And I always pray that it's helpful for you. If you have questions, just send them in the email. I will absolutely answer them. If you felt shy writing them, obviously talking about them. Um, there is also a bundle of all the meditations that we did this month. So I'll tell you a little bit about how our life in the shift works. I pop on the screen usually at 8 o'clock every Tuesday morning with my diehard group of hypno-meditators. And there's a new topic every month. So this, I forget what it was. It was limitless living last month. I'm on a roll with higher chakra stuff. And so we'll do a bunch of meditations and then we do a shift talk, but we take those meditations and we bundle them. And so there's going to be a link if you're interested in the bundle. It's going to appear there magically as Nika does her magic. And there are many others that we have been working on. Emotional eating, grief, limitless living, all the things that really come up in our lives. There is a way that we can meditate. I'm sure some of you are meditators, but never actually get to the ego piece of it, right? And so we are meditating and we have this issue and we go right underneath it, right? And that's great. That's good, right? You'll have a clearer, calmer mind, but the issue still pops up in your life, right? And so when we're doing hypno meditation, the point of it is to kind of go in there and have this really loving conversation with your deep unconscious. Get to the root of what's going on, what's really blocking you, so that when you meditate differently, you can just drop in, right? You don't have to go around all this stuff. You can just really drop in and receive the peace and the unity, right? The unity is the wholeness. And I can't be in unity when I'm in separation, when I don't think of myself as divine. Anywhere that you don't consider yourself divine, that is where you are not in unity. And that's absolutely okay. It is your blessing and the thing that you just need to sit with and learn to love. And we all need one. We all need to do that. That's the work of this planet, is to be able to go into those places and resolve them, because then we wouldn't necessarily appreciate when we get into these expanded places. I didn't create it, but I do have an understanding of it. Um, okay. I have so much appreciation and love for all of you, especially Strawberry. And again, any questions, I'm here for you. And I hope that you have a blessed evening and that you conquer your money flow. Thank you.